All right, we are live, Aziz. And we're starting to see folks come in. Awesome. As y'all are coming in, shoot something into the chat. I want to make sure it's working and y'all can see questions and anything in the chat. For example, let us know where you're coming in from. Yay, we got a question. We had someone at least submit a chat and a question. Thank you so much for that. Asheville, awesome. Very cool. Cool. I think we're a couple minutes in, Aziz, so we can probably hop in and get started. For everybody here, I'm Mike. I'm a product marketing manager here at Builder. We're here today to talk about getting started with Builder, kind of going over the core concepts of Builder, the things you do on your first day while integrating it into your code base. I wanted to kind of call out, this is the first time we've done this type of kind of developer centric session, hands-on learning. The reason we're doing it is to help y'all get started with Builder. And so the most effective use of time is probably actually for you just to continuously interrupt with questions in the chat or in the Q&A, so we can get those, help you get those answered. But in the meantime, if you don't have any very specific questions other than the ones that you've already submitted when you registered for this, I'm going to hand it off to Aziz to maybe introduce yourself and dive into some some stuff that folks can start working with Builder.
Cool. Yeah, here is Aziz. I am calling from Chicago, Illinois, and I'm a software engineer here at Builder. I joined when we were only 4 people, and I've seen Builder grows over the time. And during this time, I worked with a lot of customers, developers, and partners. That's before even the first iteration of documentation was out, and helped run through similar live demos, but on definitely smaller audience. My goal of this demo is like basically a light intro, no slides or whatever, and then jump into code and show how Builder works and answer any question that comes up during the demo. Cool. I'm gonna share screen and let me move a few things around. Okay. So if you're not familiar with Builder, like we call ourselves a visual headless CMS. That means if you're familiar with the headless CMS approach over the last few years, it's basically structured data. You define your models and you say, well, I have a hero, and this hero would have a title and text and the cover image. I would go define a model in my CMS for that. And if it's headless, it's going to give me an API to access those. And when I access those, I have the option to read through the API and basically enumerate those fields in my code, and marketers or non-development teams can go in and edit those, which is cool. It has its use cases, but it's really not for everything. What Builder said, we're going to give you the access to the structured data, same exactly as any headless CMS, but we're going to introduce 2 new model types. The model type, the first model type is sections. And this is the idea if you can model specific sections of your pages, like announcement bars, like homepage heroes, like collection heroes, or like a product page, bottom editorial content. And from that section, you basically carve out an editable region within your code base. And you're saying, instead of me hard coding all the layout options, and every time a non-developer on my team wants to change the layout, the structure, add a new text, add a new hero, instead of a title, they want a subtitle with the title. Instead of doing this, I would basically use the SDK. Our SDKs, we have SDKs for most frameworks, and get a JSON from Builder and render that. When I use the SDK with this components, I'm basically doing two things. The first is in production or live, the Builder component would render this JSON exactly as if it was edited within the editor itself. And while editing, this Builder components would carve what you would see like an add a block section, and would show the non-developer all the components that you have registered here as an option for the non-developer or the editor. And of course, this is like a simplification. When you register a component, you basically say what are the inputs for it and what the user can or cannot edit. And when you're editing, basically when you're editing your page within Builder, this SDK would actually send messages up saying, hey, in this page, there is one editable region, and it has those components available. And for those components, they have those available inputs, and it allows the user to edit and what you see, what you get, and basically construct the JSON that you're gonna get from our API. And yeah, this is really the basic concept of a section. And then we came in, we say we can actually take over full pages, which is really a section that is tied to a URL. So this page can live between the header and the footer, that's fine. Or if you have more hard-coded parts that you don't want to be edited, you can also add it under the Builder component itself. So far, so good?
Yeah, I think the tied to the URL is kind of an interesting. So for clarity is but visual sections are not tied to URLs. Is that kind of what you're implying there?
I mean, it can be, visual sections can be tied to URL. For example, let's say you have a hero that across multiple pages, but then you can eventually say, or a marketer comes, it's like, I want the hero on this specific page to be different than the rest. Then you go and you target that section by a URL. But in terms of pages, a URL is basically required to target. Okay, awesome. So this is really the light intro. The idea is to jump into like something applicable. And I went into Vercel templates and I saw this blog. It's a markdown blog. It has a homepage that lists the blogs, and each blog would have a URL, and it's here. And what I'm gonna do is I will assume that my non-developer teams would want to edit the homepage hero within this homepage, and they would basically schedule, A/B test, do whatever they like. So I'm just gonna deploy and do this July 14 demo. So what Vercel will do is basically fork that template into my GitHub account and deploy that to preview to a URL that I can use within Builder. You can also develop, we'll develop localhost as well, and I'll show you how we go back and forth between localhost and deployment.
We got a question, Aziz, which is, can stakeholders create a URL? Do you want to answer that and maybe talk about how we're likely going to get into that?
Stakeholders mean content, like creators?
That's how I read it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in when you go create pages within Builder, when you create a page, the URL is basically the first input. So if I go here and do new page, hello world, I create a page. It's gonna ask me for the preview URL, and that's the idea of integrating pages. I purposely did not do integrating pages for this demo. I thought sections would be a bit easier to go through as a first example, but really it's, if you go through our open source repo and go through the examples, and the simplest one is the Next.js simple, you'll see that we're basically consulting with Builder to see what are the URLs that our content creator or stakeholders in this example have created, and we create that within our code base.
Yeah, I think to create the landing page that everybody here registered on Builder.io, I think we used the page model where we created, a URL, and so.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
Thanks.
awesome. So let's take a look here. Go to the dashboard, and we'll see it deployed right now. This is basically just pure code. There is no builder on it. If I go to my GitHub, you'll see in the repositories, it created this one for me. I'm gonna clone it and go to the code and git clone and cd. I'm gonna add, because this is a React app, I'm gonna add the React SDK. And let's open the code. Cool. If you're unfamiliar with Next.js, they use like a folder-based routing system. So pages/index would be the actual homepage. And if I do npm run dev, would see the homepage that we saw on the demo. And this is the hero part that I want to carve it for my non-developer teams to go and edit, and what you see, what you get, and basically preview draft as well, and then also publish to live production. So in the code, this is the hero post. And you'll see this is really the same example that we have, like the basically data structured content, and the title, the cover image, the date, the author. So in here, instead of having this hard coded, what I'm going to do is basically drop in builder component. I'm going to give it the model name homepage hero. And I'm going to content equal to content. And I'm going to pass the builder content here as a prop. And I'll show you how we get that from the API as well. And you'll see the get static props. This is a function that get called on the server in Next.js. And the idea is you get all the data requirement of any page and pass it down to the page prop. So in here, what I'm going to do is basically const builder content. This is my copilot trying to be smart, but it's actually builder small letter. And would want to builder in it with my API key. This tells the SDK which space to target. And spaces in Builder is really content containers. So it's an isolated container of contents and models, and it's identified by the API key.
I'm going to interrupt with a question, Aziz. It's a little bit, I would say it's going probably a couple steps ahead of where we are right now. So if we're going to come back to that, or if we're going to get there, just let me know.
Let's see.
The question, for a set of products, my marketing team would like to display product specific content. The product selection could be based on a SKU, product attributes, product categories. How would you do this? It sounds like you're trying to like kind of architect a product detail page or something along those lines.
No, this is it's a very common question. Let me touch on it once I get to the custom component part. But in short, it's really the same as any component within your code base. So if you have a product view component that takes the product ID and render the product, you would register the product view components and have the product ID as an input. This product ID, then later you can enhance on, like, instead of having the input as a string, you can integrate your e-commerce provider into Builder and have the user actually click and choose which product from the catalog they want to show. And let me close this Q&A and chat. Cool. So I have this homepage hero, and I'm getting the content from Builder. Promise. And in here, I'm going to pass the Builder content and say it's either Builder content or null. And the reason that I'm defaulting to null is because Next.js does not like undefined. And for us, if we can't find a match, we send undefined. This is really it. But let me continue the integration first by getting the API key of my space. And I would do that in build.io and account settings, and then get that. Cool. And the second thing, since I have homepage hero model, I'm going to create a model for that. And it's of type section. And it's going to be homepage dash hero. And this is description, homepage hero, Epson. Cool. And for the preview URL, I'm going to put localhost 3000 for now until we deploy the changes. And go back to the code. This is, this should work now. If I press new homepage hero, you'll see, because we added the builder component in our code, it gave us this editable section. And this editable section, I can, drop in images or whatever I like here. The next step is I want to basically expose the thing that we hard coded before. So if I do a little bit of command, actually, let's leave this here and go to GitHub. So the thing that we had hard coded here, I want to expose it for the non-developer team to be able to just drag and drop and add their own titles and cover images themselves. So instead of actually using the hero post immediately in the content, like we've seen on the page, we want to basically build the register component. And let me get builder. From React, from builder.io/React. I'm gonna register the hero post. Of course, this is like for simplification of the example, but you'll see people not registering the hero post itself. They would register a dynamic reference to it, just so your bundle does not get exploded with all the registered custom components. If you do use Next.js dynamic or whatever your framework support for dynamic importing, you're only gonna use the components that the creator or the non-developer has used within the JSON. And I'm gonna name it hero post and give it a few inputs. So we probably want to match those inputs. So I actually have a snippet that would make this simpler. And it's this. I'll go through what it does. Cool. So the title, what I'm saying, show the user an option to drag and drop hero post, and whenever they drag and drop, I'm gonna make the title as an option input. We're gonna see that also in the code, and a cover image, which is also coming from Builder, and you can say the types file. That was the allowed formats. This is totally up to you. Date, which is on the hero image. If we go to yeah, so you see this is the date. I'm gonna also give them an option to add the title, the excerpt, and the author itself. The author is really the complicated part of the input. It's of type object, and it has a field name and a picture. And maybe not a slug, just a name and picture. That was typo. And let's go back to the editing, and we're in here. See if I save, I should see that option. Should be immediately, unless we have a doesn't matter, we can. Maybe the import was. Okay, so now I see the hero post as an option here. So for this to work, since we have Next.js has a few configuration gotchas. So right now we are actually iframing, but this is because if it's localhost, so it has a relaxed content security policy. But in real like production, you would want to specify that builder.io can actually iframe my website. That's one thing. The other thing is, since we are accepting images as an input, we will want to tell Next.js that it's okay to get images from our CDN. So if I do command and add a next.config.js and save that, I save this here in a Google Keep, and I'll go through it also. What is it? So yeah, we're saying for the images, accept images from the cdn.build.io domain, and for content security policy on all paths, accept frame ancestors ancestors from builder.io. Now, if I save, I think changing the config would require what's next? Yeah, I think it would require a restart the npm run diff. Okay, now we go to the visual editor and we drop in our blog post, our hero post components, and you'll see that those are the inputs that we had. Let's say, hello, or and give more long excerpt. Maybe give it a picture. And yeah, this is how we expose the custom components. In the case that this hero post, if I go to, was actually like your question was actually a product component, you would do, name, product ID, and type string or text. And whatever you define here as input, you're gonna get this here. And of course, we want to define the interface. And of course, in your components, you can basically react to the product ID changes and render that product view or the whatever components that rely on the product. The extra step here is you can actually, instead of having a product ID, if you have a plugin or an integration in the integration part, like you'll see we have in Builder integrations. Yeah, like Shopify, Salesforce, BigCommerce, Commerce Tools, all of those are e-commerce integrations that extend the types of the inputs. So instead of product ID, you can do Salesforce Commerce Cloud product. And if the integration is installed in your space and you're connected it to your Salesforce instance, you'll get a product catalog picker to pick which product. This would reduce the errors of like people typing in the SKU, the like manually. So far, so good. Any questions, concerns, thoughts?
I haven't seen any new questions come through. This is great. I think a few folks, when they submitted what they wanted to see here, was the custom components, which is great. Especially custom components with Next.js. So just definitely check that.
Awesome. So let me save this. And you'll see that we registered the components. The product ID was extraneous, but that's fine. It's not really that big of a deal. And added the homepage hero integration. So I'm just gonna commit add builder to homepage and git push origin A. So while this happened, I want to show you a few things about builder. Everything you're building here within this section is really JSON. So if I press Command E, I can take a look under the hood and see what actually the JSON that's coming down to my components. So you'll see component name. This is how we match the name to the component that you registered. And those are the options that I entered while editing. And this actually what your component props will get eventually when you make the API call. And they will also get that through, like when we're iframing your site in the preview, the editor will send a message that says, hey, render an image with this options. And of course, yeah, you can do styling for any of that, reduce the margins if you need, add the style tab is really an interface for the CSS props, the CSS style configuration. And if I make this 90 pixel, if I press Command E, I should see that the margin top is what I entered here. And this is all like auto handled by our SDKs, applying the styles and etc. Cool. So right now, let's take a look at the deployment.
We just got a question come in about,
Let's see.
I'll throw it up there for you, make sure. Is the CSS style configuration based on any sort of CSS framework? Is it agnostic? Can it work with Tailwind?
So yeah, it is agnostic in terms of like it's really something the SDK handle. Tailwind is what I understand is like it's not really CSS, it's more of classes. So you can definitely within Builder here you can apply classes to the HTML attributes, and you can do new class and give it that. Actually, I think there. Oh yeah, this we have like a shortcut for that. So you can apply the classes that you need here. And if you press command, if you inspect, you would see that the class is applied. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm trying, there was one thing I used once on Builder, where you could export components in different frameworks.
Yeah.
And then can you show that? And then, because in there, you can actually, you can turn, you used to be able to turn, use Tailwind. There's a little,
Yeah, but this is really for the output.
yeah, I know. I was just kind of, it's one of these cool things that it pops up every once in a while. I'm like, I feel like it's kind of a neat thing that most folks wouldn't even know about. And I heard the Tailwind keyword, so cool, super helpful. Thanks.
Awesome. So now let's see what's the deployment look like. And I think it would be empty on page hero. We have not published anything, but I'm gonna take this instead of pointing to localhost. I'm gonna tell my model to go here and save. So now I'm editing directly on the deployment. If I publish, click the name on page hero. If I publish, I should see it within a few seconds. Yeah, this is a statically generated page. See if it has a revalidation. Yeah, maybe I just give it a revalidate every 2 seconds or 3 seconds. And let me push that. And so add ISO. Cool. While this happened, let me show you. So right now it's really on, it's testing on production immediately. Let's say I have something on my local host and I want to test a few changes. I can press Command Control A and override the base here to be local host 3000. And now I'm editing locally on localhost 3000. This is easy. Like for example, you adding a new feature or something. It's easier to toggle back and forth between your local and production and match. And all of this, responsive by default. Cool. So it should be deployed. And give it, okay. Now I have, I have the hero post that was before hard-coded an option for the content creator to basically edit what they want. And if I have the Chrome extension, you'll see it will highlight that this part is actually a home page, or this is actually an editable region within Builder section. If I press edit, it should take me immediately to the content. And since this is a JSON that's delivered through the API, we can basically work with the target, maybe target by different devices, or if you have a CDP, you can target by different audiences. You can schedule that a specific hero goes out at a different specific time versus the other. And of course, you can also A/B test. So if I duplicate this and have few versions and split them evenly, now each part of the page, or maybe I need to Command Control A, and let's go back to the Command Control A.
Aziz, you're getting, I'm gonna, sorry to interrupt. You get a few questions come in. Do you have the option to import from Figma?
Yeah. Yes, so within here, you would have an import option, and basically you upload the JSON from Figma, and it tells you how would you do that. For responsiveness, there is few guidance, and I recommend really like going through this page to basically have the best possible the best possible scenario with importing from Figma.
Cool. I'll find that page and drop it into the chat. For editing and updating forms with a moderate degree of complexity, would Builder offer a first-class solution, or is that not the best usage of the tool? Is the question.
So we've seen if you would consider onboarding funnels and basically funnels that go through websites, we've seen a few people use us this way. I would consider funnels are part of like somehow a complex form, because they have multiple steps, and each step you make a decision which way to go based on the inputs from the first step. And you would want basically a way for the non-developer teams to control those steps, add few steps, add few questions, etc. So yeah, we've seen that. It depends on what you mean with forms with a moderate degree of complexity.
The chat is open. If whomever submitted, someone's up, they followed up with dynamic forms.
Cool. Yeah, this is it's possible. We have a funnel example that go through funnels, and within the funnel itself, you can use Builder forms, or you can register your own form components that takes inputs based on your really specific use case.
And we get a question: what CDPs do we work with? You mentioned CDPs briefly.
So yeah, I can talk about CDP. Yeah. It's no secret that the most used one is really Segment, but we've seen people maybe like throw another name or two. It does not matter really in our case, because whenever you get, let's say you get a request from a user, you can use whatever CDP you have to get few information about the user that is within from the CDP, like which segment are they, VIP, high paying, what's their shopping habits, and you can pass that to the API call as a user attributes, and then within Builder you can basically create a new content for that specific audience, or like a group or subset of those audiences values, and push that. We do have a feature which maybe it's in beta or private beta, I'm not sure, but this feature would auto learn those values based on the history the API you make to the, like you say you make the API calls. Those values are dynamic. You don't know which one they are. So we auto learn that from the history in the logs, and we show that as an option when you're in Builder, when you create a new content. Let's say when you say the target by audience will show you all the possible values that you have sent and how many, what's the count of them. Awesome.
I just shared that link out with the chat to dive in deeper. Working with CDPs and awesome. Is there what else? Sorry, what else are we going through before?
Yeah, I think we covered mostly really the very basic case of using a homepage hero. For more like really the key concept is like builders build within the editor. It builds JSON. This JSONs are accessible through API and can be personalized, targeted, A/B tested as well. And since you're using that JSON with an SDK that renders that, the SDK would automatically assign A/B tests, would give you insights and tracking information, and basically also can be extended with your own custom components, or you can use our basic end widgets, which can get you actually very far. It really depends on your use cases.
It sounds like we covered integrating with your code. We covered registering custom components. We covered deploying your app to a preview or staging URL, and then you actually deployed it to production. We answered a bunch of questions. And then we went into scheduling, A/B testing, and a few other things, including import from Figma. I think we summarized pretty much most of the getting started. Anything else that you think we should touch on, or?
There are honestly plenty of things. As long as you have like the core concept, what is it? Like it's basically a section and a JSON that the SDK renders it. Then you go, well, I want my users to be able to dynamically add URLs. Then you go through pages integrations, and then you say maybe a specific types products that you don't want like to have random manual product IDs entered. Then maybe I go and install an integration for my backend. If you're working on a custom backend, we do have a plugin utility library that easily you can copy any of those integrations. And for us, we only care about like how to get that product and what's the like how to fetch that product. So the utility library will show you like basically how to describe your backend in a way that you can extend Builder with types. I really recommend going through the open source library if you're interested. Like depends on the examples, what framework you're interested in, or if you're interested in building an integration for your backend, you can go through the plugins and see what they're all open source really.
About one last question from the audience, and then we'll tie this up and send out the recording to everybody. How do non-tech users do version control of content?
So like version control as in, oh yeah, so we like as in content governance, they cannot edit few parts, or like if there is a specific party wants someone to review, we have content governance feature. It's in private beta, it's coming soon, but you can also have environments, and environments is available, I think, for enterprises, but within environments, you can have multiple dev, QA, staging, and then production. And then you can restrict what kind of content goes from one space to another. And all of the content on the main space, the production would always be synced down to developers, to that dev environment or the staging environment. So yeah, you have quite flexibility here in terms of what you choose for your flow.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much, Aziz, and thank you so much, everybody else, for joining. This has been great. I definitely learned a lot, and we look forward to doing some more of these in the future. So thanks, y'all.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.